Welcome back to the 10 Adventures podcast. Today we are talking with Nicole and Mico, an inspiring husband and wife that traded in stable careers for a life spent exploring the world. Along the way, they've built a YouTube channel that documents their stories and the amazing places they've been, which now also includes their cute dog, Evie. Hi, Nicole and Mico. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Richard. Thank you so much for that welcome.
Thanks for having us.
I've mentioned this to Mico before, but I think you two have this incredible story where you've ended up as content creators on YouTube, but when you started 5 years ago, you were, successful professionals that you decided to kind of change it all in. What prompted the decision to move from stability and a regular career into the life you're living now?
Oh, gosh.
Such a good question.
5 years ago seems like a long time, too.
Yeah.
And I guess it was 5 years ago we were working back in Canada, right?
We were working and saving every penny that we possibly could.
Yeah.
With the intention of traveling for a year. Nothing to do with YouTube. No intention of making this a permanent thing. But we were saving. We were supposed to be leaving in 2020 to travel for about a year and a half. It kind of just depended on how long the money lasted. And the intention behind that was really just that we wanted to try something totally different than the life we were living. We loved our beautiful life that we'd built. We'd built a really traditional life, and sort of 2019, 2020, we were finishing both of our master's degrees, and that was awesome. But
Nicole was working as a social worker.
Yeah.
And I was working as an engineer.
Yeah.
And we just really felt that, I think maybe, I want to say we worked for what, like almost 10 years? Maybe not. That, if you hear barking, that's our dog.
That's Evie.
We worked for a number of years, and we did the thing. We went to school and got the job, and and even got our masters, and we just really felt like there was more to things, and we always had a passion for travel.
Yep.
And as Nicole was saying, is that we started thinking about different ways to make that a full-time reality, and then we decided on our trip.
Yeah, and the idea was just we wanted to take a trip that didn't have a deadline. Like there was no end date scheduled in. We went on a one-way ticket. It would be the first time in our lives we booked a one-way ticket somewhere. And so that's what we did. We booked a one-way ticket. That one-way ticket got canceled because of the pandemic, but we booked another one a year later and started then. And like I said before, the intention was just to go and travel. And then along the way, we picked up a camera, started a YouTube channel, and things have really spiraled from there into, we've been on the road now 3.5 years, full time.
I also want to say, I know, Richard, you probably got a ton of other questions, but I gotta laugh when Nicole mentions the one-way ticket, because the very first one-way ticket was to Bogota, Colombia.
It was.
And then that was the start of what we thought was going to be our very well-planned trip.
Yeah,
where we were going to start in South America, and I think we had allotted maybe like 1 to 2 weeks maximum per country.
To the whole country of Colombia.
in South America. And then we had an outline for the next 12 to 16 months. I think I still have a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we had like a 16-month spreadsheet, and we had I think the country that got the most time was the Philippines, which is actually where Mico was from.
It was probably 4 weeks?
I think we gave it a month. Yeah, we were like, so much time, we're going to really get into the Philippines.
So fast forward, so things changed. Those plans got scrapped, and fast forward almost a year later, we bought that second one-way ticket that Nicole was talking about, and that one-way ticket, it was honestly like a finger in the wind. Like we had no idea what was going to be happening after we landed, and that just kind of that to me just really contrasted the difference between the planning of the initial trip and the actual launch of the trip that we're on now.
So different.
And so making this change, you've just been getting your master's degree, you have stable careers. What was the response from family and friends when you said, oh yeah, we're just going to leave our jobs and go travel the first time for a year and a half, and then second time in the middle of a pandemic with all the uncertainty? Like, did you get a lot of support, or did you have a lot of people, trying to dissuade you from doing this?
I'll take that one.
Sure, yeah.
I think it was mostly a lot of support. I think we had been talking about doing this for years. We'd been saving up and talking about it for about 4 years, but before we actually went into it. So our close family and friends all knew about it. And I think at the beginning, what it was for us truly was this, we were just going to go and travel for a year to a year and a half. So everyone was really supportive that we were going to go and kind of live this dream and then come back and move right back into the life that we had left. And that really was our intention upon leaving.
Yeah, it was almost like a gap year and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, we were just doing it later than most do. So that was the idea. And I think people were really supportive of that. It was once we sort of kept going, and we surprised ourselves by the fact that we were able to keep going. And I think our family was then like, wait, what? You're not coming back?
Yeah.
Which is, it's still like the reality. We're still in this phase of, we're hoping that this can be our life for, we hope, a really long time, but we're living in this place of uncertainty because we're kind of building this YouTube business as we go. And so I think now our families, they're back. I think they're being really supportive again for the most part, but they are in a little bit of shock.
Yeah, I think to follow up on what Nicole's saying and to answer your question, I think there's a couple layers to that. I think there's this layer of us departing from that traditional lifestyle, and then people kind of wrapping their heads around what that looks like, especially when we think about it long term. Because it's easy to think about, dropping a really nice career to do a gap year and then heading back. But we very intentionally made it so that we really did jump. I think in the beginning we were offered leave of absences.
We were from our jobs, which sounds nice.
Which did really sound nice, but then we really thought about like what would it really feel like to have that sense of freedom and not have this end date or this schedule or this number. So we both ultimately declined.
Yeah. It's a hard choice.
And I think that brought upon like the greatest sense of freedom I've ever felt.
I'm so glad we made that choice, as hard as it was at the time and as risky as it felt. Obviously, here we are 3.5 years later, still on the road, and this is our preference. So I'm so glad we took that chance.
Yeah.
But dang, it was hard in the moment.
And before you did this trip, had you two traveled a lot as a couple before? And, it's different going on a few-week vacation versus some of the places you've been.
Yeah, we have actually, and I think our first trip was probably still one of my favorite trips was when we went to Australia in 10 years ago. I feel like I'm dating myself right now. And that was the first sign of our recklessness, because I think you took a semester off from school.
I sure did.
And then and then did I take a semester off? I can't quite remember, because originally I was going to Australia for
something with school.
A team event with an engineering team at school. Yeah. And then I was going to be there for a month, and then Nicole's like, well, you can't have all the fun.
I'm going to join you.
So she ended up taking the semester off at school,
and traveling the whole time as well.
Yeah, so like I said, that's kind of the first time that we've really had that sense of adventure. And so and that was also our first international trip together, and I think we spent about a month and a half together exploring Australia and New Zealand.
And we came back totally addicted. Like, we came back thinking we would have scratched the itch of travel, and instead, I can remember so well sitting in university, being so bored in my lectures, just literally opening Google Maps and looking at the world and being like, look at all these countries. We have to go to all these countries. And then the obsession just grew from there.
Although I do got to say that you got the better deal when you went. Nicole's first big trip was her European trip with her bestie. I think it was 54 days and 21 countries or something like that.
I just country hopped so fast.
Yeah, so she did a huge travel stint, basically the year before our Australia trip. Yeah. While I sat in first year engineering class,
poor guy.
Super jealous of what she was doing.
Yeah. So, and I think besides the Australia and New Zealand trip, we had done a handful of trips together. I guess mostly in Asia, and then holiday style, like you said. So, definitely different than this, and nothing as long term. Like, I think we were gone a couple of months when we did the Australia New Zealand stint. So nothing big like this.
And reflecting back, your first kick at the cat here in 2020 was going to be a really scripted trip where you had everything worked out. Do you think COVID kind of introduced you to kind of maybe playing it more by ear and not, kind of challenge you in how you traveled, and maybe for you two it was actually a benefit because you discovered this new way to travel?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. I think particularly me, I'm such a planner, and we were so obsessed with this trip. It was the thing that we had been dreaming about for years and working towards for years. So it was natural to plan it in every detail.
The spreadsheets, Richard. Yeah. The spreadsheets that were there.
Yeah. I mean, and that was the fun of it though, right? Like you want that build up, and it was this huge thing for us. So naturally we had every detail planned. And then, as a result of COVID, it was just like, we absolutely could not plan. That liberty was gone, or that privilege was gone. And so to be thrown into, we bought a one-way ticket to Nepal, to Kathmandu, Nepal, and it was just like, well, we'll see what happens. And we didn't know how long we'd be there. We truly had no idea. And I think because COVID forced us to really slow down, we spent 2 months in Nepal and then 4 months in Sri Lanka. And because within 6 months we'd only been to 2 countries, we felt we had the brain space and capacity to think about filming for YouTube. And so had it not been for COVID and for the slow travel that it forced us into, I really don't think that YouTube would have ever happened, because we would have done that really fast paced, 30 countries in 16 months. We would have done that. So it was a big change.
And I remember I got an email, I think it was 2019, out of the blue from Mico, and we had a video call. I thought, oh, this is so cool. These 2 young people for me, but kind of taking this bet on themselves. And then I think it was 2023 where you got back in touch, and Mico and I started talking again. And I was like, just kind of amazed at how, this trip had evolved. And I went and checked out your YouTube channel. I'm like, these 2 have been all over the world. And that ended up actually to Mico working with me here on the podcast and at 10 Adventures. And so I guess maybe, was it always your kind of thought, Mico, to, try and get, some digital nomad work as part of this lifestyle? Once you said, hey, we're not going to be just here. This is, maybe a change in how we live our life.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I got to say, Richard, it's very strange to be on the other side of the camera now, when normally I'm working on these podcasts with you on the opposite side.
Yeah.
It's great that we're finally having this conversation, because I feel like I love talking about adventure, I love talking about travel, and I love hearing the guests on your podcast talk about adventure and travel, and I'm glad and I feel grateful that we can be on this podcast with you. But I gotta say, our journey towards digital nomad life, I think it was a slow shift to that, right?
Yeah.
Because initially it was a lot of fun and travel, and then the slower that we traveled, the more we dived into other ways to make money while abroad, so that we can kind of keep this lifestyle going without dipping too much into our savings, because we did keep some money aside, of course. Just so if we ever head back home, or at least at the time we thought we would be heading back home, we could restart our life again. Yeah. But then I think the longer that we spent our time abroad, to me, the more it really opened up this idea that you can kind of create a lifestyle out here that's outside of the lifestyles that you really thought were available to you growing up in Canada, going to school, doing work. It really felt like the more people that we met, the more stories that we listened to, I felt like we started getting an idea that, hey, we could...
It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah, people do this. They find ways to work online, work around the world, wherever they want. For us, I think it slowly started that YouTube was that. And of course, we were using our savings for a long time. And then slowly YouTube was able to pay us more and more. And we were, using less of our savings. And we were able to kind of start to move into that space. And and then Mico reached out to you guys in 2023 to talk about working for 10 Adventures. Also just as a way to kind of keep us on the road, give us a more, I think, steady income, because you never know with YouTube. You truly just never know.
Yeah, I forgot what it's like to have steady income.
Yeah, honestly.
If for anyone watching this, if you're wondering how you get paid by YouTube, it is a lot of ups and downs. You just really never know.
So inconsistent.
How they're gonna pay you, if the ad revenue is good last month or bad or whatever.
It's
really
so
all depends
volatile.
on so many factors.
Yeah, which was what led Mico to reaching out to you guys, because like you said, like we'd connected in 2019 or something and loved your mission, like what 10 Adventures is all about, active adventures. It was right up our alley. And then to be at this place where we were actually, we were kind of the embodiment of that in a lot of ways. Like we were able to live that life of traveling and doing these active adventures. It just seemed like absolute serendipity that we already knew you.
Yeah. And I think I first touched base with Richard because we listened to him on, I think it was the World Nomads podcast.
Yes.
And because World Nomads was the insurance company that we
bought.
purchased for a trip. So, and I remember seeing the podcast, and I'm like, wow, this guy's
so cool.
This guy's from Canada. Like,
I know.
how have we not bumped into him? Canada's a big country, so I understand.
Let's talk a little bit about where you've been for the last 3 years. So you talked about starting in Nepal and then Sri Lanka, and maybe just like, country by country, can you maybe talk about how you traveled and explored the world?
Sure,
yeah.
We'll try and do this fast because we could do a whole podcast on it.
Yeah, we kind of split up into 4 seasons.
Yeah, we literally call them seasons. That's how it is in our heads.
Yeah, so season 1 of Nicole and Mico was the beginning. I think it was
the first 10 months.
Nepal and Sri Lanka was the first 6 of that 10 months.
Yeah.
And then that's when we really started like getting into the groove of slow travel and understanding what life is like on the road.
Yeah. And we started filming at the end of that.
And then we started filming, and then we started jumping into fast travel.
Yeah, the world has opened up a bit more. We were able to move around a bit quicker. So I'll give you in very quick succession. Let's see if I can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Sri Lanka, we actually flew to New York and did a little bit of the States very briefly. And then we did Georgia and Eastern Europe to Armenia, Turkey, Jordan, Palestine, Egypt, Malta. Not in that order. I messed up the order or something like that.
Something like that.
And then
we flew
Mexico.
And then we flew back home to Canada for Christmas.
For Christmas.
2021. And then we surprised our family, and that was honestly a really fun surprise.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And then from there, we started what we call season two, and that was South America. And South America is,
I know.
Honestly, it's where we have some of our, I think, most like purest travel memories.
Yeah.
Because South America is just, we've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
And we just never really found that we had the time to do South America because it's such a long way to go.
Yeah.
And you can't just commit. I feel like you just can't commit like
to one. Well, you could commit to one country or one place, but we were excited to be able to do a lot of it. And I think after the country hopping and culture hopping that we had done previous, like Sri Lanka versus Jordan versus Armenia, like such big differences, to then go to a whole continent that speaks the same language.
Yeah.
And you do see a lot of that similar culture throughout the entire continent. That was a bit of a relief for us, I think. It was like, we felt a bit relaxed. So we did 7 months in South America.
Not that we knew any Spanish at the time.
Absolutely not.
All very foreign to us.
But the fact that it wasn't changing, the letters looked the same as what we were used to in English.
Yeah. Was it the Cyrillic alphabet anymore?
It was like, I can at least try to pronounce this word. Like, that was nice. Yeah, so we did 7 months there and 6 or so countries there.
Yeah, and then I'll just really quickly, it was Argentina, Chile, then Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia. And then from there, we flew over to India.
Asia. Yeah, we did season 3, we call it, which is Asia. And we did, I don't even know the countries there.
We started in India.
Yeah, that was jostling.
2 months in India. That's a bit of a, oh man, let me tell you about
to the system.
Yeah, let's say 7 months in South America. Everybody speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
You're kind of getting used to all the food and the colors and the culture.
Yeah.
And then you land in New Delhi at 12 in the morning. Now that is what you call cultural whiplash. And
that was an experience. India, highly recommend India, but man, you got to be ready for her.
Yeah.
So after India, what did we do? Oh, went back to Sri Lanka.
We just love Sri Lanka so much.
It's our favorite country in the world. We could rant about Sri Lanka all day. So we went back to Sri Lanka for a month. We filmed it because we had actually never filmed it the first time. So we decided, let's show everyone the beauty of Sri Lanka. So we filmed that. And then from Sri Lanka, where the heck did we go?
And then we just did we went to the Philippines. And then just did a bunch of Asia.
Yeah.
And
Malaysia, Singapore.
Yeah.
Japan, Korea.
We ended up going to Mongolia, which I think is probably one of my favorite adventures.
Absolutely.
It was actually, we messed up flying to Vietnam because we were in Japan. We were going to fly to Vietnam. We had everything booked. And then I think we messed up our visas by like a day or something like that.
Yeah, it just didn't come through in time, honestly. And so we couldn't get on the plane. Like, we had a flight booked to Vietnam. We literally sat at the airport hoping our visas would come through, and they didn't.
So we literally spun the globe. And
where can we go for cheap?
For the same amount of prices to go to Vietnam, like tomorrow, where else could we go? So we decided, we've never been to Mongolia before, so we might as well try that. And that ended up being probably one of the best mistakes we've ever made on the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a mistake. I would call it like a miracle. because it really helped us discover I think truly an untouched or really I don't know, just a country that I think that has so many hidden gems that I think
people don't really visit. Tourism's not super built up there. It was always a place we wanted to go, but I don't think we would have pushed ourselves to go. Like, there were so many other really accessible countries to still visit. Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. We were like, oh, we could do all those ones. And then it was like, no, Mongolia is what's affordable. And we're like, let's do it. Like, how often do you get to just look at Mongolia and say, I'm going to come to Mongolia? So that was a great mistake.
And then just to wrap this up, because I know this is taking long, but after the end of that season 4 is when we went back home to Canada.
Yeah, we
bought a car, and then we grabbed our dog, and now we are on this road trip. We have been on the road for almost a year now.
Yeah, with our dog Evie.
And we started from Calgary in Canada and drove through US in 2 days, and then Mexico in 8 months, and now we're here in Guatemala.
That's pretty accurate.
So and then that brings us here to Lake Atitlan, which is the beautiful view that you're seeing behind us right there.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of volcanoes that is always welcoming us every morning. So, yeah.
And talking to Mico every week or so, Guatemala seems like a place you've both loved, or at least Mico has really loved. Like he should be working for the tourism board, because I've discussed going there with my wife. I'm like, Lynn, you got to hear about this. Like, you got this culture, you got mountains, you've got lakes, you've got this history. And it's not super hot. It's not like you're in a jungle, you're at elevation. So we're not going to be sweating all the time. It'll be like a really pleasant place to go. Does it fit with Sri Lanka and Mongolia as kind of one of these places that you've both fallen in love with? Or is it mostly just Mico?
No, both of us, for sure. I think Guatemala is special to us because...
I think you more than me, to be honest.
Perhaps.
I miss the beach, actually.
Yeah, Mico misses the beach more than me. He's a beach guy for sure. And although I love the beach, this temperate climate is incredible. We're even been here in rainy season, and it's still so sunny. The nights are wonderful because they get down to like the mid to high teens. So it's great. You can be in places without air conditioning, and then the days you're still getting mid to high 20s. Again, even rainy season. Like, we have a little pool here. We can get into the pool almost every day if we wanted to, because it's warm enough for that. But I'm never, like, it's not so humid that you can't walk around and you're uncomfortable just doing daily life tasks. It's wonderful. And I think for me, what makes Guatemala stand out from a lot of other countries is that not only do you get the beautiful culture that's here, and it's really in your face because the people they're dressed in these stunning colors, and like the
Mayan culture.
Yeah, the culture here is just it's actually just obvious because it's truly just around you. But I think for me, and I think I probably speak for both of us, what I love most about Guatemala is the environment, like the nature that's here, the jungles with the volcanoes. You have so much to do outside here. So, and like obviously this beautiful lake behind us, like the nature that is in Guatemala that's accessible from the tourism standpoint is top notch.
Yeah, and actually I was thinking about this morning, and earlier in the conversation we talked about South America and how South America really has some of our best travel memories.
Yeah.
And that's because I remember South America to have not only great culture and great food, but it had these unreal outdoor experiences. You know, you have Patagonia, and you have the Amazon, and you have the Bolivian salt flats.
The Andes.
Yeah, right? And so when I think about South America, I actually really think about a version of that, a lighter version of that, and that becomes Guatemala.
I see what you mean.
Because to get to South America, you know, it's a 6-hour flight from Canada anyway, 6-hour flight to Mexico City, and from Mexico City it's another 9-hour flight to Buenos Aires, and then from there it's a 3-hour flight to El Calafate.
It's far.
20-hour bus ride down to Ushuaia. So, you know, South America is a long ways to go.
But Guatemala.
Now we're talking about a
holiday.
Could be a direct flight from Guatemala City to LA or to somewhere else in North America. When I think about Guatemala, it almost kind of seems like that South America light, because you have all the culture, you have lots of great culture, lots of great food. Yeah. You've got this really diverse outdoor experiences, right? Like, we've done so much already.
We have,
and we've barely moved, like, truly geographically in the country.
I know, we've been here for almost 4 months. We've really done all of our adventures in the span of probably like a 200-kilometer radius.
Yeah, actually, that's so true.
It's amazing, and I think that's what makes Guatemala so special to us, is that there's so much that's accessible from a small country. It's a small place, and yet we've been able to do incredible things.
I've always had this advice that if somebody had, 6 months to travel, and where would I go to do that kind of long-term travel, I would say South America. Yeah. But if someone told me, like, I had one really good month to travel, where would I go? Yeah. I would actually honestly say Guatemala.
I think it would definitely be on the list of places I recommend.
In the Central America area, because it's closer. You have such again, the diversity of outdoor adventures. Yeah. Yeah, you'll never get bored here.
Nope.
So you obviously love Guatemala. What are some of the tourist activities that, have really impressed you or, really imprinted on your brain that make it such a special place to visit?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think it comes back to the things we've been able to do in nature here. So hiking volcanoes is a great example. That is a big tourist activity here, something Mico and I had never done before.
There's definitely no shortage of that, as you can see from our background.
So actually with 10 Adventures, we went on some really cool adventures. We hiked a volcano called Pacaya Volcano, which is pretty close to Antigua here in Guatemala. Antigua is the major tourist center. We also did like some cycling around the Antigua area, which was really cool. But I think probably my favorite, I don't know if this is my favorite, it's hard to say, but I do think one of my favorite things has been our time here at Lake Atitlan. We did some kayaking on the lake here a few weeks ago with 10 Adventures. And that was incredible. I love kayaking just generally. And to be in the middle of this lake, surrounded by volcanoes in Guatemala with the lush jungle around you, that was magic.
Yeah, I'm really glad we did that as a tour because I don't think it's something I would have done like by ourselves, like passing through.
Yeah, I would have been a little scared actually, because the water can get choppy, but in the mornings it's just like glass. So we went out really early. It was magic.
I think that kayaking ride was amazing, and I remember we flew the drone a little bit from the kayak, which is very scary to launch a drone and land it while you're on a kayak.
Yeah.
But I remember just seeing the space that we were kayaking in. I mean, we've done a ton of kayaking in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously that's its own thing. It's so beautiful there, but I've never been in a place where we've kayaked surrounded by volcanoes, basically in a giant cauldron of water.
Well, we're in a crater. Yeah, Lake Atitlan is actually a lake, like that's the result of a crater. Like 2 river systems were here. The volcanoes erupted many, many years ago, and this crater was created from that eruption, and then they filled with the waters from the rivers that were around this area. So it's so cool. You're in the middle of a crater surrounded by volcanoes. It's magical.
Yeah, I think just the country lends itself well to trying different activities.
Yeah.
So it's not just, you're not just going out there for a hike. You can go out for a kayak, you can go out for a cycling ride, which I've never done before up until the trip with 10 Adventures.
Yeah, never. Which was so cool. I think we might be addicted.
I honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it because I thought, my butt would hurt after for a couple hours, and I don't know.
And you've never been huge on bikes.
Yeah, I'm not really big on bikes.
Whereas
but
I love bikes, but
I actually got me hooked a little bit.
I know.
Because not only could we kind of explore further.
Yeah.
I was actually really surprised how far we can get just on a bike.
Yeah.
But I felt like you also can visit places that normally you wouldn't visit as just like a walking tourist. Like
it was immersive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it felt immersive into like the city or the towns that we were going through, and yet we were on a bike. Like we were just kind of passing through, but I really felt like we got a peek into true Guatemalan daily living as we just rode by all these people going about their days. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and for anybody who's watching this, we did a tour with 10 Adventures, which was honestly, it was so good. The cycling ride and the volcano hiking in Pacaya.
And then here as well,
and then here in Lake Atitlan, I've really enjoyed it. Again,
some cultural tours.
I feel like these are things that we normally would not have done, but because we had this great opportunity, we had this great place to do it in.
Yeah.
I just fell in love with it, and I think that's probably has been adding to how much we've been enjoying Guatemala.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You mentioned 2 other kind of somewhat off the beaten path destinations in Mongolia and Sri Lanka as being highlights. And maybe, Mico, do you want to talk a little bit more about what you loved in Sri Lanka?
Oh, yeah, in Sri Lanka. I'll try to talk about it, but I'm sure Nicole's going to want to talk about it too, because she, I think it's it's your top country, right? I think it probably is mine as well.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka was just this... it was just this, I felt like for Nicole and I, because we spent 4 months there, we really felt like we settled into it. And we really were able to take our time adventuring throughout this country. And this country, just for context, and I know we've got a diversity of audiences here, but for those who are Canadian and who know about the province of Alberta, Sri Lanka can probably fit between Calgary and Edmonton.
The whole country. Yeah, we actually did one of those, how big is a country if you actually flatten the map properly, things online, and it just spans Calgary to Edmonton. So it's a small country. They call it the crown jewel of the Indian Ocean.
Of the Indian Ocean, yeah, that's right.
And it's just this little small, circle.
and because it's so small, and for those who are not aware, like we're talking about a distance of 300 kilometers.
Yeah.
Right. So
top to bottom.
Top to bottom, and so it's a small country, but for sure it's not going to take you. It's going to take you a long time to travel through it because there's so much in that country.
And the roads aren't good.
And the roads aren't good.
But yeah.
That's why there are trains. And if you actually, you know what? Here's what your audience, if you're looking at home, thinking about traveling to Sri Lanka, look up the most beautiful train ride in the world. Just Google that, and I would bet that's if maybe the top photo or maybe the second or third top photo will probably be the Nine Arch Bridge in Sri Lanka. It's this beautiful. You get this really old looking train traveling over this rustic brick made bridge with 9 arches and in the backdrop of a lush green jungle. That is Sri Lanka. And we took that train ride. I think it was about 7 hours or 5 to 7 hours
like
from Ella to Kandy, and that train ride is so gorgeous because not only do you go over these bridges, but you're passing through these tea plantations, right? You're passing through such villages and jungles. It is beautiful, and then you usually have these photos of the tourists hanging out and off the
dangerously hanging out, as I did.
Yeah, you actually did get.
I did.
Yeah.
I got hit by a bush. Anyway,
because all the trains there, they're kind of open, so you can kind of just hang out. So maybe hold on to your kids.
Yes.
But honestly, Sri Lanka has so much to offer, and not only just the jungles, but you have the beaches as well.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the incredible food.
Yes, and the people.
Yeah.
So friendly, so welcoming to visitors. Yeah. And I will just add on top of that you've really hit on like the nature, but also the animals. Like we would truly just be driving our scooter along a road and you just look to the left, an elephant. In the wild, a wild elephant, just there he is. He's just eating from the tree. And that was kind of mind-blowing to us.
Yeah.
There's so much to see and do in such a small place. And it's just the best cultural experience.
So you mentioned Mongolia as well as being one of these destinations that you fell in love with that, again, isn't super popular. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what makes that such a compelling destination?
Yeah. Mongolia is special because there aren't a lot of people there. That also means that, in terms of foreigners, although also in terms of actual Mongolians.
Yeah.
It's, I think, the least densely populated country in the world.
I think maybe second only to the Antarctica.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So there is so much space in Mongolia, and the environment changes so much at every 500 or 1,000 kilometers you drive, because it is really a big space. And so I think what makes Mongolia special is that you have a lot of freedom in Mongolia. We rented a vehicle there, for example, and just drove on our own. And you can drive for weeks and see a new part of Mongolia. And you're getting to be in these destinations where there's just nobody else. Like our first night, I think, when we rented our little truck and we popped it up at, was kind of a campground, I guess. But there was nobody around us. We had camels waking us up in the morning. Like, I think someone must have owned the camels. But so the camels just kind of strolled through where our car was parked up.
Oh, yeah. That was magical
sheep
morning.
In the morning. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And that is just kind of the essence of Mongolia. There's just space for you to be. And when we first arrived, we went on a really cool tour. We took a tour for
love that
5 days, I think.
Yeah.
To see the Gobi Desert. And that was remarkable. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the car, of course, because again, it's a big place. But in between the drives, you get to go to these incredible destinations, like massive cliff sides with lots of incredible history along the way. And of course, for us, the big part of that was visiting the Gobi Desert. And we go to this huge sand dune, climb this mountain of a sand dune, and get to see one of the most incredible sunsets of our lives. So Mongolia, I think for me, what makes Mongolia special is that you have that freedom. You're doing a lot of it on your own, if you want to, but if you do want, obviously, help with things to do it, like there's great options to do that in the country, and you are going to see things that not a lot of people get to see.
Yeah, I just think that it was just a landscape that we've never seen in any other place.
Yeah.
Like, someone actually, one of our subscribers, he went and visited Mongolia with his dad after he saw our video about Mongolia.
Right.
And they went on a tour, and I remember he said his dad put it really well, that looking at the horizon of Mongolia is like looking at a horizon of land. Instead of looking over the ocean.
Oh, I see.
Instead of looking over the horizon over an ocean, instead of replace the ocean with just untouched land for as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
And he says he's never seen that level of or that feeling of smallness before.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
And I think that's kind of what I felt when we were traveling in Mongolia.
It's kind of like the feeling you get when you're up against huge mountains. Like I remember we were in the Himalayas in Nepal, and I just felt so small because you have these giant mountains. But you get that same effect when you go to Mongolia and there's just nothing. It's just plains as far as the eye can see. Like they call the Mongolia steppe, and it's just endless, like grassy, dirty, sandy stuff.
Yeah. Amazing place.
Really cool.
So one thing I think is really unique about how you two approach travel compared to a lot of other content creators is they're going someplace new every single week, and it's kind of, really focused on these, like kind of like really temporary journeys, whereas you are about, slower journeys, I think. And, just, talking to you today, and then, just also seeing kind of the journey you've been on this trip down your car journey of, almost a year going, down through Mexico and Central America. It's really about going slow, and that's rare in travel these days. And so for people who are used to a 7-day trip or having, every day planned out, can you maybe try and share, like, why should people consider going slower or maybe even doing less?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Do you want to take a stab at it?
You can. If you can answer, go ahead.
Yeah. I think for us, slow travel, that was born out of necessity in the beginning. And then we started to realize that this is pretty good. I think when we were living and working in Canada, when we had our jobs, obviously we had limited time away. And in that period of time, we did try to tackle off as much as we can, try to see all the kind of, the bucket list sites and tick that box as best as we could. And then when we started doing a lot more of our slow travel style that we're doing now, I almost kind of felt like we didn't really see the country as a number anymore, or as a box to tick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people ask us how many countries we've been to, and Nicole and I actually try to intentionally not count.
We actually don't know.
Because
we generally know. We're in the I think I've been to 50-something countries, but I don't know.
It's somewhere around that range. And I find that when you kind of count a country in that way, you kind of summarize a whole country in one checkbox.
Yeah.
And when you travel more slowly, you start to realize that you can't just pile a country into one box.
Like ticking Mexico off because I went to Cancun on an all-inclusive vacation just feels like such a sin now that we've seen so much of Mexico. and I feel like I really understand how different, the north is from the central, from the south. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Right?
Even one side of the town to the other, the hills versus the beach.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason that we never kind of country tick anymore. And I mean, people love that. I totally respect that and understand that. I think in some ways too, just to add to that, I think it really is a privilege that we're able to slow travel because we do feel like we have some time. And in the past, when we were working really hard and going to school, and we only had a few weeks, maybe a month off to travel. I understand that we really wanted to go and see places. We wanted to do everything. We wanted to fit in as much as we could in that time because we were so eager to get out and travel. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That is just the reality of that life. And now we really do have the privilege of, I feel like I have time. I don't feel like, okay, I have to see as much of the world in 1 month as I possibly can because I don't get another chance for a year. And I think that's a big part of being able to slow travel is knowing that we don't have an end. So it's okay. I can take it slow, really enjoy this, and then there's a whole other country to explore after this, which is a privilege.
And I think in that slow travel, we're discovering that each country has just, like we said earlier, kind of the multiple facets of it. And then we started thinking that, let's maybe take a bit of our time just because we can to explore each of those facets. So, anybody who's watching this thinking about traveling to a country, maybe you've got 2 weeks or you got a month, maybe instead of, piling in
three
countries in the span of 3 weeks, maybe try, I encourage you to explore maybe, doing one country in 3 weeks and then traveling to different parts of that country because then you I feel like you get a fuller experience and
I agree.
And then, you leave more for next time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm sure a lot of people listening are wondering, how do you afford this lifestyle? And I know recently I was talking with some friends about retirement savings. And when I talk to Mico, I think one thing that comes through is this type of lifestyle it can be way more attainable than I think people assume. Can you maybe talk about, how you make this happen? Because from the outside, it just looks like this dream lifestyle. And I think a lot of people probably think, oh, this is, you guys come from a lot of money, or you have, trust funds or something that allows you to live this way.
Yeah. I always joke that Mico is secretly a Filipino prince, and that's how we're doing this. He's not. I went and visited his hometown. Not a prince.
Oh, come on. There's like lots of land and palm trees, like.
Yeah, lots of sugar cane.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a stab?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah.
I did the last one.
I think the affordability of it, it's tough to answer, because it could sometimes I would say it's a lot easier than you'd expect, and sometimes I would say it's a lot harder than you would expect.
Yeah.
In some ways, Nicole and I are really primed for this kind of lifestyle, because we did, we obviously, it's Nicole and I. Our only child is our furry child that's at our feet right now, our dog Evie, and we had been working for quite some time in Canada with let's call it like the kind of regular careers, corporate jobs at home, and we were able to kind of save up for this lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So for the first part of it, it was really we were basically, we weren't doing anything magical. We were just basically saving every penny that we can.
Mm-hmm. Living below our means when we were in Canada and saving for it. Yeah,
and tried not to get into riding the trend of getting a bigger car, a bigger house, and those kinds of things. We really kept our eyes on the prize, so to speak, of travel. That was truly our dream and our passion. Mm-hmm. And we made that work for 4 years, and then eventually we had this lump that we were able to travel with. And
lump of money, is that what you mean?
Lump of money, yeah. And obviously over the years that's kind of eroded, but now that's why we try to mix it in with other ways to make it more sustainable. So for example, obviously our YouTube channel, that brings in a little bit of income. We've also got other income streams, like we have different affiliate programs, we have different kind of sponsorships.
Yeah, all related to the YouTube channel.
All related to YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all these small things have really added up to basically a sustainable lifestyle for now, for us to be able to travel and work while we're on the road.
And I'd say a key part of it being sustainable is that we are living in countries that are more affordable than Canada, where we come from.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Like we couldn't go home right now and feel like we're going to be totally fine and be contributing to our savings a lot, because Canada is so expensive to live in. But to live in Guatemala is way more affordable. So I think, to summarize what you said, the transition was we saved a bunch of money for travel. Travel ended up being actually this transition period to digital nomad life, where we went, okay, we feel like our minds are being open to all these opportunities that other people have done. We're meeting these people who have found incredible ways to work while they travel. We want to do that. What can we do? And then we were fortunate that we had put aside enough of a nest egg to allow that transition to take place and slowly go into this life of digital nomad that was, we were bringing in enough money to sustain ourselves.
Yeah.
But again, so far we have to stay south of the States.
Yeah.
And I think a big thing I've noticed is you stay in some incredible Airbnbs that are super economical. And what I've learned just talking to Mico is you're not staying, right on the beach. You're not staying right in, the major tourist town. You're staying, because you have a car, you're able to stay just a bit outside and, staying for 25 or 35 or 40 bucks a night. All of a sudden, one of the biggest expenses for most travelers is that hotel room. And you guys are able to get, a nice, look at the view from your backyard here.
Yeah.
And it's it's super economical. So I think you've also, adjusted your spending to be sustainable, that you're not treating like this is on holiday where you have to have a 4-star hotel. It's like, we're just living here, and what do we need to live? Which is, a different requirement than a short-term 1 week in Guatemala.
Yeah,
and
that's a great point, Richard.
And I'll just add, I think another, a resource that you don't, you might not necessarily see when you're traveling is that time can definitely be used to make things a little bit easier. And because Nicole and I have this lifestyle of being on the road basically full time, we're able to kind of stretch things out and have that work for us. And like, for example, and stay longer term in places and then work out, negotiate a better deal that way because we're staying for
a month
long stay as opposed to just 2 nights, right? So
Very
I think
true.
when you're traveling slowly and when you're traveling with a bit of time, it does make it seem a little bit more reasonable cost-wise than you would if you were to do a short, like, quick hit trip.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so being digital nomads and spending all your time together, for some people, they would love that. That would be a dream. For some people, that would, terrify them. What's it been like spending all this time together over the last 4 years? Like, what's been the impact on your relationship?
What a good question.
It has its ups and downs.
Absolutely, it does. Being together 24/7 is simultaneously.
Well, you have to jump so quick on that.
Being together 24/7 is simultaneously the best part of this lifestyle and the worst.
Yeah.
Because like we feel so lucky that we're together all the time. In that, like I remember being at home and feeling like we were lucky to be in the same room for a few hours a day. And if we were in the same room, it was usually we were doing schoolwork or more work, just next to each other. We weren't really getting that good time together, and so having that as an option now is amazing. However, I would say if we were just traveling, I think that's all. I would end the conversation there. It would be easy and fun, and I would love that we're always together. Having a business together and running a creative business together, that has been where the learning and I think the growth has really come in for the last few years.
Yeah. I think, and that's perfect. Like, I think, honestly, Nicole and I feel like have been unique against other couples that I know in that we can spend, I feel like, an endless amount of time, like, beside each other, and that, life would go on. Whereas I know some other couples that I probably can't picture in a room together for more than 24 hours before one of them
which is
goes
fine.
crazy.
Everyone has their own way.
Which is totally fine, but I know we've always been like that even since like high school. So, and I remember people thinking that was really weird.
It kind of is weird.
But that lends itself well to our lifestyle of being together 24/7 when we're on the road. The trouble, as Nicole says, is when your wife or your spouse is also your business partner.
Yeah. And there's nobody else. Like, it's just us.
Yeah.
So if we have a difference of opinion, like, we just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And this is it.
You can't even complain about your coworker with the other coworker.
And there's no space, right? It's not like...
Except for Evie.
Except for Evie.
She hears it all.
She's a great coworker.
She's always at the water cooler. She's always lending an ear.
Yeah, she's a good support. I think, it is difficult, though, that, like, we truly are together 24/7. If we're ever apart, it's like one of us went to get groceries. So maybe they're gone for an hour or two.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And that's rare. So I think not having that space, if we do have a disagreement or an argument, if you're living our old life that we lived in Canada, it would be like, okay, we had a disagreement, but you're going to go to work, I'm going to go to work, and we come back at the end of the day, and we're just, let's have a good conversation about it, right? We've decompressed, we've had time apart. But with this lifestyle, we don't get that. So learning to function well as business partners and as spouses in this, like, kind of, like, just compressed situation, pressurized, has been a learning curve. I think that we're doing pretty good at it, but
we are.
We obviously have moments where we're not very good at it.
But I also will add that there is a flip side to that, and it's that the fact that you're you're living your life with your spouse side by side, and you're also in a business together, basically with essentially the same goals. I feel like there's it's almost like a sharp spear of this lifestyle, and you're both working on it together. So I think that is also such a unique thing that you don't get, I think, that many couples who can say that them and their spouse are working on the exact same project to achieve the exact same goal, so that they can continue living the exact same lifestyle that they have in mind for each other.
It is cool to be very aligned in that way all the time.
So looking back on the last, almost 4 years of living this different lifestyle, is there like a key takeaway or something you've learned that you think, oh, this is something that, you're one of the few people on earth that are doing this, that maybe the rest of us that aren't can learn from?
I actually have an answer for that.
Okay, yeah.
I would say take the risk. For us, it has felt very risky to do this many, many times. It's absolutely terrifying and has taken a lot of courage to take this leap and believe in ourselves, especially because we built up a really lovely, comfortable, stable life in Canada that I think traditionally people look at and go, oh, that's perfect. You guys did it. You know, we spent all these years in school. We got the good jobs. And so that was safe. And that is safe. We can go back to that. And that is part of the reason we feel comfortable taking the risk we've taken, for sure. And that is another huge privilege that we have. But I think what my biggest lesson is, like, take the risk now and if you can, right? If it's a good time in your life to take it, try it. The worst that can happen is you fail. And so, you know,
we fly back home.
That's what we keep saying. It's like, hey, let's say this starts to fall apart or we hate it or whatever. You know what? We just put it away. We say, okay, we tried that. We didn't love it or it didn't work. And we go back to Canada and we pick up where we left off as best we can. So that has been my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest takeaway was spending this time on the road and seeing how other people live their life and having this alternative viewpoint on life. It really highlighted to me. I remember seeing this YouTube video the other day about how you can rewire a brain. And I want to say it is totally possible to change your perspective on life, especially on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think back home, I think one of the biggest things that honestly I feel like is still a miracle is that we had this, I guess we had this foresight to take the leap, because it really brought us, it really took taking us out of our situation,
our bubble
to realize that there are other situations or other alternative lifestyles. And it was really hard to see that from within, from inside of that. And then when we actually jumped out of it, we could realize, oh man, I could live at home, or I could live over here, or I could work and do this, or I can just dabble in this for a little bit and then try this. But this idea of thinking that I don't have to follow the script.
For happiness, that wasn't really making us happy.
Like that idea, it took us taking a massive leap to realize that. So for anyone listening to this, I want to say that you could, from your own home, you could already start thinking about challenging yourself to re-envision what you have for your life. Because I think, I would rather have taken a leap and failed and said I've tried it, than look back,
with regret.
Many years later thinking, well, what if I did book that one-way ticket,
Those are two beautiful messages to share to end the podcast off. I want to say thanks for coming on the show, Nicole and Mico, and sharing your passion exploring the world.
Thank you so much for having us, Richard. It was really nice to get the chance to sit down and chat with you.
And Nicole and Mico have this great YouTube channel, and it's just a really fun way to follow along. And I feel like it's just like, it's a really authentic channel. And I said earlier, like, there's a lot of channels that they're constantly, it's not clickbait, but they're just doing stuff for the clicks, where I feel your channel is just really authentic about living this lifestyle and exploring places in a different place. If people want to check out your channel or find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube under Nicole and Mico. We're also on Instagram under Nicole and Mico with an underscore.
Maybe you should spell your name.
Oh, yeah, Mico is spelled M-I-C-O.
Yeah, and Nicole is Nicole.
So yeah, find us on Nicole and Mico, and that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram.
Wicked. I'll put links. Actually, I won't put the links. Mico will put the links in the show notes.
I'll put links in the show notes to our own channel.
So they'll be correct, which is nice.
I always say I'll put the links in. I just send Mico an email saying, here's the links. But Mico's always the one that puts it in. So he'll put in whatever links he sees fit. And yeah, I urge everyone to check out the videos. They're just so much fun to follow along. And with that, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the 10 Adventures podcast. We'll be back next week to explore the world and hear about more epic adventures. Bye-bye. Start planning your own adventure by visiting us at 10adventures.com and listen to other episodes of the 10 Adventures podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you find your podcasts.